and welcome to Ancient Awakening with Castalia. I'm Castalia, and I finally have my little corner officially set up for this podcast. I put up my tapestry, and we are set up to kind of have an official space for this podcast. My next step is getting a mic and maybe a little desk to add to the ambiance. I am Castalia, for those of you who don't know me, and I mainly do work over on the Realm of Inspiration at elfianrealm.com to help inspire the collective all in their ascension journey. I work to help heal and guide through my channeled readings and coaching sessions. I am a certified card reader, channeler, and crystal Reiki master, and I am also certified in Greek mythology and ancient Greek gods and goddesses. So what better way to combine both of my passions than to make this channel and uncover the spiritual metaphors hidden in myths, specifically Greek myths. The teachings and guidelines are already there before us. They are just hidden beneath the surface of stories full of tragedy, heartbreak, war, death, love, and more. The time for metaphors is done. So let's find clarity together through a transformative journey that is Ancient Awakening. Now for this week, at the gates of the Underworld stands a beast with 3 heads, not just a guardian, but a mirror. Cerberus doesn't just keep the dead in, he keeps the living from crossing. Why? Because we fear death. Not just the end of breath, but the end of identity, attachment, and control. In this week's episode, we will explore Cerberus as the embodiment and metaphor of our fear, mentally, emotionally, and physically, in regards to death and transformation, and how we must face him to truly awaken. But before we understand Cerberus, let us dive a little bit deeper into our own shadows and go over the journal prompts from last week's episode. So I'm going to give kind of a very brief summary of my answer to these prompts, and it is mainly to invite discussion in the comment section below to talk about these things and to have our own created community and support system. I am also probably going to start doing, if I haven't already, posting these prompts on the community page as well as the affirmations, so we can also have conversation there, a little bit separate from the videos as well. Maybe it'll feel a little bit more private and personal to just be on a specific community post for the journal prompts. So if I have not started doing that already for the episodes, I will start doing that after this episode, and you can go there and see the journal prompts from the previous episodes, and we can talk about it. Firstly is, which of these concepts do I struggle with the most, and how does it show up in my life? So to recap, the 7 concepts are lust, pride, greed, gluttony, sloth, wrath, and jealousy, or envy. Pick which one, whatever one shows up in your life. I will pick sloth to talk about publicly. Sloth, I put down the spiritual sloth is something that I sometimes do struggle with, which is, probably surprising given everything that I do, but some days I am so drained and so exhausted that I quite literally cannot fathom doing anything related to my spirituality, and that can carry for a few days. It's not considered sloth. It's like one day and I'm tired and I just want to rest, but it's like the following day and then the day after that I sometimes can struggle to get back in my groove, and I kind of could fall prey to spiritual sloth a little bit, or sloth in general, of just like, hey, here are the habits, let me get back in the human habits. I mean, to put in perspective, I started my healing journey when I was 16. And I was kind of a spiritual hermit for that period of time. I was keeping to myself a lot, and then I started going out into the world and doing holistic fairs, and working jobs, and then working on relocating my entire life back to the land of my ancestors. Moving and adjusting to a new country, a new environment, having family around me finally, and in general, like the number and amount of people that come to Greece in a summer is like a lot of energy, and now I feel a little bit more at peace because now tourism is like kind of quieted down a little bit. But that kind of adjustment time can make me fall prey to spiritual sloth in a way that I didn't think that I would. But when my life was very different, when I wasn't around people and I kind of barely had a social life, and I was work, healing, work, clients, work, healing, like my life was focused on that more. I wasn't experiencing spiritual sloth as much, but now that I have other things going on, I can fall into like maybe some habits from before I went through my awakening and healing of just kind of if I'm just too overwhelmed, just trying to sleep the overwhelm away instead of sitting and facing my overwhelm, like my feelings of being overwhelmed, and trying to decompress and journal and getting back in that habit. I really think that in that sense, my biggest challenge is like, okay, if I'm feeling this way, I open a card deck. That is sometimes the thing that can pull me out of it. Like I will open up a oracle card deck, I will pull a card and I will get into it. I will have to, or sometimes pull up myself and be like, okay, let me do affirmation, let me do a protection, let me do a healing, let me do something that invigorates my soul. The best way to pull yourself out of spiritual sloth is things that invigorate your soul. So that being said, the next prompt is what mythical figure do I resonate with and what lesson do they offer me? So I kind of took this a little bit more generally, nothing necessarily to do with the episode and the myths that I mentioned, but also kind of for me, I used to answer Athena. Considering where I live now, it's like Athena, but no, I used to think that way because I loved the qualities that Athena possessed, but I was always very drawn to also Poseidon and Apollo. More so Poseidon just because of the sea, but Apollo in general because of the qualities, and so I spent my life kind of realizing that I am more in tune with the qualities of Apollo, even though the good qualities of Apollo, not the like envious qualities of Apollo that we talked about last week, but like the other aspects like the creativity, the prophecy, the healing. You know, in Delphi there is Pythia, who I feel like this is that where we get to my answer, Pythia, from myth, who would channel messages of Apollo, and his prophecies needed a vessel. So more so that way, but then not Pythia, and actually genuinely my namesake. Genuinely. So my name is Castalia, and I am named after the fountain of Castalia, the spring of Castalia, and the nymph that is also known to, in mythology, be associated with it. And of course, you know that I have it in the cup. I have it that I'm going to do a whole episode about the metaphors in her myth. And that's quite literally how I went through the process of determining this. Like, first it was Athena, and then it was Apollo, then Pythia, but like genuinely the nymph Castalia, or the minor goddess of creativity, inspiration, and poetry, that it took my mom 6 months to pick my name. And then given everything that I do, I think that I am honoring my namesake quite well. And also in like the real world, not like mythology, but the real world, poets and playwrights, when they were in Delphi, they used to drink the water and sit by the springs of Castalia to get inspiration, and also it was considered to be a cleansing rite before entering the Oracle of Delphi. So in general, that resonates with me the most. I mean, also Athena and Apollo too, but more so that, and a little bit Poseidon in the sense of like protection over marine life, because that is also something that I do have a little turtle. Yes, and the lesson that offers me is to honor myself. Castalia, she turned herself into the fountain, according to myth, turned herself into the fountain to avoid being pursued by Apollo, which is about the story of most nymphs. But she honored herself and removed herself from a toxic situation. Some myths, Apollo has some like profoundness, and some myths he's just like a not so nice guy. So there is duality there. So yeah, more so also like creativity and honoring inspiration, and because it's the fountain and the springs, more like our emotions, can be the thing that inspires others. So sharing our hearts can inspire others. So that is a lesson that I am following as best as I can. So I will take any excuse to talk about my namesake or Delphi. Actually, in some videos, I end up having to cut just how much I derail myself and just start talking about Delphi, because I will do anything to talk about that. Anyway, prompt number 3, how does my soul respond when tempted by power, pleasure, or revenge? Yeah, I'm going to talk about specifically revenge. Yeah, we're going to talk about revenge. I have had opportunities to, in a way, with, blah, 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 backstory stuff thing. My estranged father and his family did me wrong in so many ways, and my estranged father, there's a reason he is estranged, and I've mentioned it before, I've mentioned it, and I'll mention it for the rest of my life. The things he did to me was not very good, psychologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and his family were happy bystanders, and when you're having to fight with grown adults to love you when they're supposed to love you anyway, and they're, your aunts and your uncles, you have higher expectations, and it was a lot to comprehend as a child. And I think it genuinely took me 10 years to process, because I left him when I was 11, and when I had the 10 years, this past year, I finally feel like I processed everything that happened, and I was able to fully let it go. But I was faced with a few opportunities to share my story and my truth of what they did to me in ways that would have been more vengeful, and especially in regards to his family that were bystanders to what was done, and so what was also done to my mother and brother, which, I think that I genuinely started to care more about what happened to them than me. In regards to that, I was tempted, and I realized that it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything. What I can do is just be myself, share my story, and for a while I wanted to share it in a way like I wanted to basically expose everything in a fictional story. It's something that I might just like genuinely write the story of what happened to me and not fictionalize it and over dramatize it, but I wanted to, and I did waste a lot of energy trying to do that. And I wanted to do it in a way like I want this on their screens. I want them to know that I am talking about them. I want everyone in their life to understand exactly how they hurt me. That's not gonna change anything. What I can do is tell the story of how I healed, and see, the point of why I sat and I was writing those stories was to tell the story of how I healed, but I got very consumed with the deep details of making it very clear who I was talking about without naming names, and making it very clear so they understood, and anyone who knew them personally understood. And here's the thing, me sitting and just mentioning that alone, if them somehow finds this video where anyone they knows, and me just saying this in general, they're gonna know. So that's not the point. that shouldn't be the point. If I'm going to create something, I need to be creating something that's going to have more meaning in the world than just proving that I was hurt, proving what abuse was done to me because they didn't want to accept that or listen to that. And revenge, and we learned this in last week's episode, isn't going to change anything, and actually it damns your karma. So related to this week's episode, it can affect your afterlife as well. And if you're so consumed with revenge that you live your life trying to, you know, exact revenge, then you are wasting your beautiful soul energy on something that's genuinely not worth it. Because I can just tell my story, and whether or not they hear it, they didn't acknowledge it in the moment. They didn't acknowledge it when I was crying to them on my knees, begging them to understand me and love me. They didn't hear me then. They're not going to hear it no matter what media form I put it in. What matters is that I forgive myself, I forgive them, and I let them go, and they're not in my life. And that's what matters. So that is less my soul and more my ego really got more consumed with that, and I can tell you that was draining for my soul. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. And I should have also an episode of how revenge is not worth it in myth, because even if we think of the story of Achilles from a few episodes back, he kind of exacted revenge, but then revenge was taken on him and he died, and it becomes a vicious cycle, and that's a cycle we all need to break. So prompt 4, what would it look like to transform one of these concepts into a virtue? If I were to transform one of these concepts into a virtue, I think transforming revenge into forgiveness, because I feel like the opposite of revenge is forgiveness, and forgiveness is a virtue. So that's that, and I kind of already talked about that when talking about the previous prompt, that forgiveness can pull you out of trying to exact revenge, and revenge is related to wrath. So forgiveness can kind of help you calm the rage. And so that would look like being able to forgive yourself and others. Prompt 5, where am I resisting growth, and what fear lies beneath that resistance? I think that the area I'm resisting growth in is genuinely, it's quite a few things, but some of them are like low-key a little personal. I think in general would be maybe my relationship with animals. I had been resisting growth with a little bit. I think now it has improved so much. But for a while I was terrified of anything that moved due to some gaslighting done on my brain when I was a child. So it took me a while to overcome that, and I'm still struggling with it. If I bring it again, I'm still working on the effects of a phobia that was implanted in my brain. I'm still working on that with the dogs, and that is my area for growth the most. And also not falling into procrastination would be 2 areas. The fear that lies beneath procrastination is, what is it if I create something and nobody sees it and it's not really worth my time? But you never know. There are some videos on the realm of inspiration that when I created them, nobody watched them, and now lately I'm getting notifications that people are seeing them, and it is meaning something to them now, when I created it 3 years ago. So you never know when it will mean something to someone. And with the dogs, the fear that exists is I am no longer who I was when I lived in America. So if I am able to fully be done with this like little hesitation with dogs and embrace them in the same way I do like cats and other like reptiles and birds, then, you know, who I was before kind of doesn't exist. And so what does it mean if who you were before doesn't exist? Like, really, like, what does it mean if the person that you knew you best your entire life is completely different? Like, that can be scary. Change can be scary. The biggest thing that I was afraid of as a child was change, because change was traumatic for me. And so that really pivots beautifully, and I did not plan this at all, pivots beautifully into this week's episode of our fear of death and fear of change, and how Cerberus is a manifestation of that. Actually, how I came to this conclusion with Cerberus is I was with a Reiki healer, and I was in a Reiki healing state. And I had the vision so clearly of the unraveling of this metaphor and what it meant for me. So that is why I put that in the cup, and that is why we are talking about Cerberus. So Cerberus was born from Typhoon, and Cerberus is the monstrous hound of Hades. He guards the entrance to the Underworld, preventing souls from escaping and mortals from entering. His 3 heads are often interpreted symbolically as the past, present, and future, but for the purposes of this aspect of the metaphor, it represents the 3 dimensions of fear, which is also related to past, present, and future. So mental fear, the unknown after death, emotional fear, attachment to life and loved ones, and physical fear, ego's grip on the body. So this actually is related to past, present, future as well. If you consider the physical fear is more related to the present moment, like feeling like the grip to the body, what is it going to be if I don't have the body? And then the past would be the emotional fear, so the attachment to the past, to the loved ones, the life you created. And then the future fear is the unknown after death, so what comes after. So it is still related to past, present, future, but just in a little bit of a different way. So the mental fear, the head of thought, represents the mind's struggle to comprehend death, fear of oblivion, judgment, or the unknown after life. Blocks spiritual transformation by clinging to logic and certainty. So this head would whisper, what if there's nothing? What if you cease to exist? So this is related to also the future fear. So then emotional fear, the head of attachment, it symbolizes our love for the living world, family, beauty, comfort, materialism, fear of losing what we know and being forgotten, also of eternal separation, keeps us tethered to the familiar, resisting soul evolution. So this head cries, I don't want to leave, I'm not ready to let go. This is the past fear, what you are leaving behind. So the physical fear, the head of the ego, embodies the ego's identification with the body, fear of decay, pain, and the loss of control. The ego cannot survive death, only the soul can. So this head is screaming, I'm the body, without it I am nothing, even though that is not true. And this is the present fear, because presently we are incarnating in the body. So we can feel like at times that we are the body, but we are more than the body. We are an infinite soul. So Cerberus is not just a monster, he is a threshold guardian. To ascend, we must face each head, acknowledge the fear, and walk through it. This is the initiation of death consciousness. Not morbid, but liberating. Cerberus doesn't block the path to punish us. He waits to see if we are ready. Now, you can imagine, I've mentioned that I have, experienced most of my life having a dog phobia. So when I am presented with dogs in Reiki, which I'm presented with them so much, to the point that they've given me the term that they have a kinship connection with me, which I feel that. Now when I look at them and I'm like, there's something eerie about them to me. Spiritually, I can sense them. It's not even a fear thing. The thing that scares me is that I sense them at this point now. Before I was manifesting them because I was afraid. Now I don't have the fear anymore. It's gone. But it scares me when I sense them and I turn around and they're there. I can feel their presence. And I can also in the morning predict that I will see one. I kind of can see it before it happens. And it's one of these weird, sometimes I have these dreams where then they come true in a few days, things where I can feel a little bit scary to sense these things. It's sensing energy. I can sense their energy. Empathically, I can pick up when they are in distress and I feel like I'm in distress, which is why with my empathic ability, I am all energy protected here. But it's a very bizarre feeling for me. And I think also one of the first Reiki sessions I had, I was presented with Cerberus. So that is also interesting as well. It's made like the image has made its presence very clear to me in Reiki sessions throughout the last 5 years of my life. Wow, 5 years. It's a really surreal feeling. 5 years of my life, of like healing and evolving. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. And to kind of know and understand that I am also facing the fear of death, the fear of being forgotten. I was when I was younger, when how I perceived the world was very different. Cerberus is a very fascinating metaphor and symbol, and one that I avoided for a while. But also, and I was told this, that like even with all the phobia stuff, even when I was at its worst, I always had this fascination with understanding what Cerberus meant. Like, why 3 heads? Why a dog? Well, dogs are associated with loyalty and familiarity, but there are also guardians. And I was always trying, as a child, I was always trying to understand what the myths meant. I mean, they were like my bedtime stories. I was trying to understand what they meant since I was a child. I always, when I heard the stories, I knew that there was something more there. And so the fact that I am doing this now, and I am deep diving into the metaphors, even if only like 3 people see what I'm doing, it makes my inner child happy. So I want to talk about a little bit, some little stories of Cerberus in myth, and how that kind of showcases his metaphor. So firstly, we did kind of talk about Hercules' final labor, so we're going to have a brief summary of that again, because we did a whole episode on Hercules. I will be linked to this video for you to check out. The Hercules' 12 labors of awakening, so it'll be the video at the end of this video, so you can watch it next. But a little bit of a recap is, as Hercules' 12th labor, he was tasked with descending into the underworld and bringing Cerberus to the surface. But there was a condition. He could not use any weapon. He had to rely on willpower, courage, and spiritual strength. Hercules faced Hades, asked permission, and wrestled Cerberus into submission, not by force, but by endurance. This labor represents Hercules' descent into shadow and return as a purified soul. Cerberus tests his readiness to face death without fear. Ending with Cerberus proves Hercules has transcended the ego, and he earned immortality after that task. So think about it, it's there. Cerberus here is not the enemy, he's the final gatekeeper of transformation. So another example in myth is Orpheus and the power of song. So Orpheus, grieving the death of his beloved Eurydice, descends into the underworld to retrieve her, armed only with his lyre. He plays his music so beautifully that Cerberus is lulled to sleep, allowing Orpheus to pass. Symbolic rebirth is in this myth. Orpheus does not conquer death, he moves through it with grace. Cerberus responds not to violence, but to art and soul expression. Though Orpheus ultimately fails by looking back, his journey shows that beauty and vulnerability can soften the fear of death. So there will be a whole episode about the Orpheus myth, but basically, he could only retrieve her if he didn't look back at her. The one condition was not to look at her, and he looked back at her. So he did have hesitation and feel a little bit of the fear of what if she's not there, but that's like not trusting Hades a little bit more, so it's a little different. Cerberus here represents the fear that can be soothed, not slain. You can't face fear with anger. You gotta face it with level-headed serenity and love. So the third and final example in myth that I want to talk about, I picked the top 3, is Psyche's descent, the soul's trial. So in one of her final tasks, Psyche must descend into the underworld to retrieve a box of beauty for Aphrodite. She's warned not to look inside. On her way, she encounters Cerberus and feeds him barley cakes to pass safely. Psyche, or Psyche, it's really pronounced Psyche, I'm reading it the American way, but the Greek way is psyche, means soul. And her journey is the soul's path through death and rebirth. Cerberus is the fear she must acknowledge and appease, not fight. Her descent and return mark her transformation into divine consciousness. So Cerberus here is a test of humility and preparation, not brute strength. Hercules is the warrior who conquers fear through endurance, the physical. Orpheus, the artist who seeks fear through beauty, so that's a little bit more emotional. And Psyche, the seeker who transcends fear through humility, so that's also the heart, also the mind. Orpheus and Psyche can kind of switch what is heart and what is mind. Each myth offers a different path through death, and Cerberus is always there, waiting to see if the soul is ready. Cerberus is the threshold guardian, and in several myths he plays a key role in a hero's confrontation with death, fear, and ultimately transformation. So Cerberus is part of the rebirth arc, not just guarding the underworld, but testing the soul's readiness to evolve. So in myth, here are some Cerberus fun facts and kind of how this helps enhance the metaphor. So according to mythology, Cerberus's 3 heads symbolize his ability to perceive threats from all directions, past, present, and future. This makes him not just a brute force, but a watcher of time and transition. This can be representation of the soul's fear of what was, what is, and what might be. And a metaphor for the mental fragmentation we experience when facing death or radical change. Cerberus doesn't just guard the underworld, he guards the soul's passage through time. Some depictions of Cerberus include a serpent tail, and in certain versions, Cerberus has multiple heads beyond 3, and even dragon-like traits. This can symbolize chaos, danger, and unpredictability, the emotional turbulence of transformation. It can also represent the rising kundalini from the base, a serpent at the threshold of awakening. You can interpret the tail as the root chakra's resistance to death and change, the primal fear that must be transmuted. And another hero who descends into the underworld, Odysseus and the underworld. While Cerberus isn't directly confronted by Odysseus, his presence in the landscape of the underworld during Odysseus's descent in the Odyssey reinforces Cerberus as a symbolic presence, a reminder that every soul who seeks wisdom must pass through fear. Something about reading Odysseus and Odyssey right next to each other really confuses the brain. Even when not named, Cerberus's presence looms. The fear of death is always part of the journey inward. And for this I did 4. Lastly, evolution of Cerberus and later interpretations. So in modern retellings and art depict Cerberus with sympathy or complexity, not just as a monster, but as a guardian doing his sacred duty. This opens the door to reframing Cerberus as a teacher, not a punisher, a gatekeeper of transformation, who only blocks those not ready yet. Cerberus does not ask if you're brave, he asks if you are whole, if you are strong enough to face what will be on the other side. So, Cerberus is not the end, he is the beginning, the guardian of your rebirth. Cerberus is a mirror of initiation. So, in ancient mystery traditions, so I want to talk about this as the Eleusinian mysteries, which I have in the cup. To do that as a whole episode is symbolic of the descent into the underworld, not as death, but as spiritual rebirth. So they did these rituals mainly in regards to Persephone's journey in the land of the living and the land of the dead. And they would have rites in Athens and rites in Eleusina, and they're called mysteries because what they did in Eleusina, the higher rites are a little bit more unknown, but they did it as kind of rituals of rebirth. So it kind of begs the question, When Cerberus in this context actually is the guardian of the threshold, are you ready to die to who you were so you can become who you really are? So death happens all the time in different senses, and when we experience change, the old is dying. So this transforms Cerberus from a monster into a sacred gatekeeper, not blocking the soul but testing its readiness for evolution. So he is the final test before rebirth. You can also see his three heads as initiation trials, so mental surrender, emotional detachment, and physical transcendence. The soul must look into each head's eyes and say, I am not afraid. So I'm going to, before I kind of like do a little concluding summary, I want to invite you to close your eyes and imagine yourself standing before Cerberus. Now, do it together. Close your eyes. Imagine standing before Cerberus. One head growls your deepest doubt. One cries your deepest grief. One stares with the hunger of the ego. But you do not run. You do not fight. Instead, you look into each head and you say, I see you, I honor you, I walk through you. And you can say that 3 times. I see you, I honor you, I walk through you. I see you, I honor you, I walk through you. I see you, I honor you, I walk through you. And open your eyes and shake it off. So I thought that would be very fun to include because that's kind of what I had to go through with how Cerberus showed up to me in Reiki. So how his symbol showed up to me. So a few little summary points. So Cerberus isn't just fear. He's the embodiment of the shadow we must integrate. So each head represents a part of ourselves we repress. Cerberus doesn't block the path, he holds up the mirror. To awaken, the soul must descend. Cerberus guards the gate not to punish but to prepare. This positions death not as the end but as a threshold to rebirth. Kind of said that a few times. Cerberus, in mystery traditions, initiates often faced symbolic death. Cerberus becomes the guardian of sacred transformation, asking, have you faced your fear? Are you ready to leave behind what no longer serves you? Cerberus is not the final boss, he's the final blessing. And I have been in a Reiki state with my guides using Cerberus, asking, are you ready to face your fear? And I'm looking into the heads of 3 dogs and I'm like, well, this is my fear, so I gotta face it. And honestly, when I have been in those states in healing, when I go out into the world and I see like, you know, a little German Shepherd barking, comparatively, I'm like, you know what, actually I faced my fear. Because it really is, it makes so much sense that the metaphor for the embodiment of the fear of death is this like massive dog. Because you think about it, it's this like massive beast, but if it's calm and peaceful, it's actually very friendly. So it's the way that we can turn something positive into something negative. Like when I was a child, I loved dogs, and then I had a phobia like trained into me by my estranged father, and so something that I loved was turned into this big monster that I had to overcome. So I can very clearly see how that metaphor happened. So also you could associate as well as the body systems, but like mental fear, like the third eye, like awakening of the third eye. Emotional fear, the second head, like awakening of the heart, and the root for the third. So kind of the different sections of the 7 chakras. So also like the fear of the unknown, fear of loss, and fear of survival. As well as a different way to interpret it, which I wanted to include since Hercules' 12 labors. We also talked about how they were associated with the chakras. So a invocation you can state is, I stand before the guardian of death. I see my fear. I feel my grief. I release my body. I walk through the gate. I am reborn as an infinite soul. So I want to ask, and this is like not necessarily a journal prompt that I will talk about in next week's episode, but just want to prompt, is if you were to meet Cerberus at the threshold of transformation, what would each head say to you, and what would you say in return? I'll just kind of mention this now. I think for me, one of them would say to me, have you truly forgiven? Have you truly moved forward? And have you accepted your own worth beyond how other people value you? And what I would say in return is, I'm trying 3 times to manifest it. No, I would truthfully say that these are the 3 lessons that I am currently learning. And they are things that I want to accept. I also, maybe one might say something about like, how do you feel about your karma? And I'm working on it. But yeah, that I thought was a little bit of a fun thing to include. That's Cerberus's metaphor. So thank you for joining me in this journey, and let's affirm some things together, some affirmations. So affirmations for crossing the threshold into something new. You gotta shed the past, you gotta let it go. So don't think of it as necessarily like, okay, shedding your body and like being your soul. Like we're still in Christ, we're still alive. So living as a soul within a body, but imagine it like you are a dragon or a snake and you're shedding some old skin as you cross the threshold into something new. So I honor the mystery of death as part of my soul's journey. So this is an important affirmation because you are accepting, like, not just death, but change. I honor the mystery of change. But also honoring and understanding when things die, when things go through their different cycles, when parts of your life, maybe friendships or relationships, no longer are existing, that it's for a reason. Next, my love for life does not blind me, it empowers me to evolve. I am not my body, I am the eternal essence within. Fear is the guardian of transformation. I walk through it with grace, and I have grace for myself. And Cerberus does not block me, he prepares me. So the threshold guardian does not block me, he prepares me. So now it's to the journal prompts for next week. So what do I fear most about death? And where does that fear live within me? So maybe within what chakras within you, what body system? What emotional attachments keep me rooted in the land of the living? How does my ego resist the idea of life beyond the body? If I could speak to each head of Cerberus, what would I say? And what would it mean to die before I die and awaken beyond fear? So these questions we will discuss a little bit next week. And it's now time to draw from the cup. We have the cup here for next week's episode. So let's see. Okay, what will the fates choose for us? Here we go. Oh, this is so cute. Okay, creator and creativity, Ilios and Selene. So the sun and the moon, the Titan Ilios and the Titaness Selene. I thought about doing creativity and creator with Apollo and Artemis, but they're actually more embodiments of divine masculinity and femininity because they are more than just of the sun and the moon. So next week's episode, we will be getting into that, the spiritual metaphor of the creator energy and the creativity. So that will be next week. And I can't wait to see you then so we can keep uncovering the ancient wisdom left before us in the tales, folklores, and legends from the ancient ones, from our ancestors. Our ancestors left us so much wisdom, and it's time to uncover it. So I'll see you next week as you continue joining me in this journey of actually truly uncovering the ancient wisdom that my ancestors left behind in Greek myth. And I will see you then. Let us be empowered by our ancestors. I'm really feeling that for some reason. I'm feeling the need to say that, so we're saying this. Let us be empowered by the wisdom of our ancestors and awaken our ancient wisdom together.